Hello, folks. Greetings. Welcome back to the class. This is the same spreadsheet we have been working on for quite some time now. Um, so, the last time what we saw is that we came up with a conditional statement where we were trying to take a go or a no go decision based on the maximum budget, right? So we did that. And also we learned how to do looping in VBA by filling up the date and the month. Okay? So today, the one thing that I want to let you know is that, so last time, if you, and let me go to the code. So if I look at the code, and by the way, if I click on the macros and do an edit, I'll get my code. Also, if I click on Visual Basic, I'll get my code. So you gotta understand that. Then, so the last time when we cleared this area, you see that when we cleared this area from A19 to C2000, what happened is the borders that I actually formatted, those borders also got cleared. And we really don't want that, right? We want only the data to be cleared. So the first thing, that's the first correction we are going to make. We are going to change that. Instead of saying clear, we can say clear contents. Okay, clear contents. And when you don't know a command on an object, it's quite easy. So when you put a dot, Excel already shows that for you, right? So then you can type clear. So for example, I wasn't clear, right? So when I want to change that, I can also do control space and I can get what options are available. Okay, I press the control space and I can see what options are available, and then I can do clear content. So that way, you don't have to remember these. You can just understand the concept and later you just see what commands are available, right? And of course, you can always Google stuff. There's a lot of resources. You just need to type and say that, hey, how do I clear only content without the border, and you can find out. So that's one. And then the other thing is, today in the class, what I want to do is really not only that I'm going to fill up the date and month, but I want to fill the loan amount, that is the loan amount that is remaining, the interest that I'm paying, the principal I'm paying, and the balance that is remaining, right? I'm also thinking that, for our purposes, probably this, let me see. What I'm thinking is that it's better if I don't care about loan amount, because the loan amount is already there on up here, and that the balance remaining already tells me what is the balance remaining, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this last column, which kind of is redundant. So I'm going to do Control X and then right click and say insert cut cells. I think I caused a problem. let me go and say Control V. Okay, that's what I wanted. Then I'll reformat these things a little bit, make it a little bigger maybe. Okay. And this one a little bigger. Okay, that's good. And so I'm just going to get rid of this column because we don't need that anymore, and then I can have the formula here, make it a little longer. Okay. So all I need to do is do the balance remaining, right? So that way I don't have to, so I know what's the initial loan amount, and then I can say that, hey, how much how much I'm paying, and of that, what is the interest paid, principal paid, and what's the balance remaining, right? It's easier for us to visualize this. Okay, so going back to the code, the one thing that I want to do is see, the last time we cleared the A cell and the C cell, but right now we need to clear from A to I, correct? All of these columns, A to I. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that clear statement. Where is the clear statement? The clear contents. And then put, instead of C, I'll just change that to I 2000. Okay. So the whole area gets cleared, so that every time we recalculate stuff, we can recalculate stuff, right? Why do I? Okay. And the other thing you will notice, I'm giving a lot of spaces and stuff. In VBA, you don't have to provide any space at all, right? But I'm doing that for readability. Okay, so that my code is a little bit more readable. And then later in time, I'll also show you how to write comments. Okay, and comments are really a way to tell the other programmers what you're trying to do. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that. Anyway, right now I just want to jump into programming itself. Now we had this loop, and we started with, if you see somewhere here, let's see. So we started with, setting some values for the A19 and the C19 row, correct? That is the very first row. We added some value. It's the same thing that we did. If you think about the manual way in which we did it, we also made the same thing. We populated the first row and then copied things in the next row, right? So right now, what I'm going to do is, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Since I've already set up the A19 cell with the date, right, the start date. Then the C19 cell, we started with the month number, which is 1. Okay. So, but your interest paid, your principal paid, and the balance remaining, of course, the balance remaining will keep going down, right? But your interest paid and principal paid are pretty much the same calculation, right? You just need to keep track of your previous balance. Okay. So first, let's start with calculating the interest paid. Okay, that's the first thing we need to calculate. And let me create these for each of these columns. I'm just going to create a dimension so that I can do the calculations, right? So one variable is interest paid. As currency. Principal paid. And you can see that when I define these variables, I start with small case letters. And whenever there is additional words I want to put, I'm just using uppercase letters. This is called camel case naming. Okay, it's just a convention. You can use however you want. What I do is, if it is a subroutine or a function, I use capital letters. And if it is variables, I use small letters to start with. Okay, just a convention. Okay, principal paid as currency. And I'm also going to add balance what did I call it? Balance remaining. I'm just going to call it balance as currency, because these are all currency values. See, I'm trying to be very disciplined here, okay? I'm giving enough spaces. Whenever there is a group of statements that's related, I'm grouping them together, right? If there is an if then else statement, then I'm putting them in a separate row, right? I'm giving enough spaces for all of these things, right? And clear content stays on its own, right? So those are kind of things I'm doing, and this discipline is necessary because, as I told you, once this program becomes big enough and it's there, after a month you will forget. You yourself will forget what is this program doing, and what happens when somebody else have to modify the program that you wrote and you left, right? That's why going through all this discipline makes the program really readable. Okay. So I defined those variables. So let's start with the interest paid. Okay. Now, how do I calculate interest paid? Interest paid is always calculated as, you take the whole loan amount and take the interest on that loan amount. You take that particular percentage of interest per month, right? You apply that interest for that loan amount, and then that is how much interest you're paying, okay, for that specific payment, because this is a monthly interest. So every month you're accumulating some interest, right? You're paying some interest. So every time you have a balance amount, you calculate that percentage, you will get the interest amount. Okay, so it's very simple. So going back to our code, interest paid is equal to, now the initial interest paid is always you're going to calculate based on whatever is the loan amount. So the loan amount is range, because I don't think that I copied the loan amount. Did I copy the loan amount anywhere to a variable? I don't think so. So I do need to use the range. Okay. So range of loan amount is in E2 dot value E2, I need to close the parenthesis and say dot value, and that multiplied by, now remember, when you get this interest per month, this value, when you are getting the value, you won't get a percentage, you won't get 0.375, it will be 0.375 divided by 100. So it automatically makes the decimal calculation and gives it to you. So all you got to do is just multiply. Okay. So, and that interest, I already have the value of that interest, right? And then I calculated R. So I already calculated R, and R is the interest, the yearly interest divided by 12. That is already calculated. So I have a variable that way. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a R there. So I have the interest paid already calculated now. Okay. Then let's talk about principal paid. Principal paid is very simple. You take the monthly payment. You take the monthly payment, subtract that with the interest paid. That will give you the principal paid. Okay, so I'm just going to do that. So paid equals, so the monthly payment that we calculated, and I'm pretty sure that I have the variable here, PMT, right? So that's the monthly payment. Subtract that with the interest paid. And of course, it's now a lot of people don't like this VBA editor, because modern programming editors are a lot more better than what this VBA editor offers, and I don't know why Microsoft didn't change this so that you can do formatting and stuff like in modern editor, right? And that's probably because that they were thinking that, well, Visual Basic for applications, it's really non-programmers who will write some small programs to do stuff in Excel, right? But if you want to do more complex stuff, there are options where you can use other full-fledged development editors, right? Like VS Code. And I'll tell you how to do that. There are some plugins that you can map, and there are various ways in which we can do it. At some point, we will switch to VS Code. Okay, so that way, you want to do things like source code control. That is, you want multiple versions of your code so that you can go back and forth with code and stuff. You can do that, right? But right now, we're just using this editor, and the editor is a little bit, it's not very programmer friendly. Okay, I'll put it that way. So I got the principal paid, I got the interest paid, and of course the balance is really equals the original amount, which is that, right? Minus the principal you paid, right? Okay, that's pretty much. So the calculations are quite simple. So I think that only this payment calculation is quite complex. Once you know that, then the rest is all quite simple, right? Just some addition and subtraction and multiplication, and you're good. Now, so therefore, I got the initial interest paid, initial principal paid, and initial balance. Okay, let's just fill that up in. Okay, so I'm going to say range of, now these range numbers, right now it's okay to hard code them, right? So the range of E19 dot value equals interest paid. Okay, and I'm going to copy the same thing, and we'll replace the addresses. So the other one is G19. G19, you are going to put the principal paid. And range I19 dot value equals balance. So what we have done is we calculated the interest paid for the very first row, okay, the principal paid and the balance, and what we are doing is we are populating the Excel cells E19 G19 and I19 with those values. Okay. Now it's always better to test these to make sure they look or they work correctly. Okay. So let me run them and see if that works for whatever the calculations we have right now. Okay. So it says for the first payment, you're paying obviously you're paying $1,125 on interest, so much on principal, and that is your balance remaining. And this is because you got to pay off in 3 years. So as your number of, so this is the other thing that you got to understand, that as your number of payments decrease, your principal paid increases. Okay. So for example, the same 300,000, let's say that you take 30 years, okay, normal mortgage time. If you take 30 years and then if you run your macro, you see that your monthly payment is very low. You're only paying $1,520, but your interest paid is really high. Of that $1,520, hardly little bit you're paying for the principal paid, okay? Because it's for so many months you're paying, so you're paying a lot more. So lessons learned in finance is that the more shorter your loan period is, the less you're paying. It's a little counterintuitive because your monthly payment is always more when it is less number of years, right? So you may feel like you're paying more, but actually in the end you're actually paying less. Okay. Anyway, I want to demonstrate that. But anyway, so we calculated that. And once we have calculated this, it's quite easy because all you got to do is put the balance, take the balance, again do your interest calculation, take the previous payments balance, do your interest calculation, do your principal calculation, and keep going for the 360 months, right? And so now we'll do the loop thing. So this is, we did it for one row. We'll do the loop and then we'll do it for everybody, right? Every row. How do we do it? I'll show you. It's very simple. It's simple because you already did the previous set of stuff, okay? That's why it's simple. Now, we need to start with, you see that there is this month address, right? So we actually remember, if you remember it, we actually calculated the month address, okay? We said that, hey, month address is 18 plus the month number, okay? And we also said that the month number is calculated as the original month number, which is 1, and we are adding one more to it, plus 1, and then here we are doing that calculation, right? Now month number is good enough, but right now it's not just the month address. You got to do the interest paid address, you got to do the principal paid address and the balance address, right? And so like you have the month address, we need the same type of address for interest, principal and balance, okay? So I'm going to copy that variable, going to make 3 copies, right? And then I'm going to say that the first one is the, well, let me not do interest paid address, I'll just put interest address, right? So month address, after that I have an interest address, then I have a principal address. This is to calculate that. Remember, the address is changing every time you go through the loop. That's why I need to calculate the address. And then there is a balance address. And now coming back to our code, If the month address calculation is made that way, then the other addresses are quite easy to calculate. I'm again making 3 copies. So one is the interest address. The interest address is really, the calculation is the same, except that the column changes to E. So I'm just changing that to E. You see how simple is that? Then the principal address, again everything is the same, the column changes to G. So I'm just changing it to G. Then finally the balance address, and that is I. Okay. The calculation is the same, but I'm just changing the column names. Okay. So then I need to now calculate the interest paid, principal paid, and balance. Okay. And I already calculated it once this way, right? I am going to copy the same thing here, and I'm going to make some modifications. Let me make the indent right. Okay, so the interest paid originally is we were taking the full amount and calculating the monthly interest, right? But once you get to the loop, you got to go to the previous balance, which is actually balance object, right? And you need to calculate the interest. So all I need to do is replace that real Excel address with balance. So instead of range E2 value, I'm just taking the balance that is already calculated. The balance has a value. You are taking that and multiplying it into the rate, which is or. Or never changes in the loop. Balance keeps changing. So the next time when it comes into the loop, the balance will be the previous balance. You got it? So that's why these variables become very powerful when you do it. Okay. So I did the balance multiplied by or. Now the principal paid is always payment minus interest paid. That never changes. Okay. The balance, on the other hand, has to change now, because we are not going to calculate from the loan amount but from the previous balance. So balance is basically, I take the previous balance variable and subtract the principal paid. Okay. So now once I do that, now you'll have to populate those values in Excel, in the cells. So for that I'm just going to copy the same way I did the month stuff. I'm going to make 3 copies. I'm going to start with replace the interest address with the interest paid value. Replace the principal address with the principal paid value. And replace the balance address with the balance value. Pretty simple, right? Because these addresses are calculated. Every time you come to the loop, it's going to do 18 plus the month number. Month number is incrementing, so it will increase. Your balance will keep changing. And so with that balance, you're calculating the interest paid and principal paid. And that's pretty much it. And then you're replacing all the different Excel cells with the value. And you're doing that over, in this case, 360 times for a 30-year mortgage, right? Okay. So theoretically, this should work, unless otherwise I missed something. So let's run it and see whether it works. Okay, let's keep seeing. Did it keep going? Yes. So you can see the one healthy thing is your interest paid is decreasing over time. Your principal paid is increasing over time, and as I keep scrolling down, it keeps doing that. And in the end, the last one, it did zero, so it's $0.02, right? Well, that's because you're doing decimal calculation, and that's probably why it's doing that little that decimal amount. It should be actually $0, right? Now, in real mortgage, people will kind of round it to two decimal places. So if we round it to two decimal places, that problem will not occur, right? So, and it's always better to round it to, and so your loop really did end in the at the 360th month. So that's not a problem. It's just that we need to do a rounding to two decimal places, right? So I think we should correct it because this is a financial calculation. We don't want to have these rounding errors. So let's go back here. And so how do I change that? It's very, very simple actually. When you do interest paid, for example, you're doing the interest paid, principal paid, and balance. Those are the things that needs rounding, right? There is an Excel function called round. And we'll see what options it has. It has the number, and it says how many number of digits after the decimal place. After the decimal, how many number of digits you want. We want, like, since it's financials, 2 digits, right? And so I can do this round on all these values so that it displays better values. By the way, when you use Excel formulas, they automatically do this for you, okay? But in our case, we didn't do that, okay? Okay. So I got to use the same round function for my other calculation down inside the loop. So I'll do that. Sorry. Come on. My mouse is working up today. Come on, 2. Okay. Now let me run it. See if that fixes it. Well, it's still doing a little calculation. I wonder if I need to round it because I want to round it to maybe 3 decimal places. Let me go back and do that. No, I'm talking about cents, right? So I'm guessing that it should be 1 decimal place. Okay. Now, there's a whole lot of um, reading that you can do on how financial calculations are done in Excel and how to make sure that, because Excel is used a lot in financial calculations, right? So there's a whole lot of reading that we got to do, and we'll get to it. Right now, I'm just making it up as I'm teaching you. Okay, let's run it. Yeah, that looks a little bit more better, right? So it says $0 in the end, right? So in the end, the balance will have to end at zero. Okay, so that's really why I want to make sure that it's these numbers are rounded very well. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. Um, Now, before I finish, I mean, this lesson was very short because the previous one is quite complex, and that's why this one is very, very short. But I do want to show you one more thing. But before even I go to that one more thing, I want to show you that if you now look at the code, right, it's quite some number of lines, right? And let's see, do we have trying to see center inform, arrange buttons. Well, I'm looking at options, editor format. So that's the font size and stuff. So it has indentation and quite some. I'm trying to see if there is a way for me to display the line number. Looks like that's not possible in this editor. Okay, because I want to see how many lines it is. That's okay. It probably runs over 100 lines, right? And so what I'm trying to say here is that, and this program runs over 100 lines. And then what you would have noticed is I kept copying and pasting a lot of stuff. And after copying and pasting, I replaced things in it, right? Now, there is a little bit more efficient way to do these things instead of copy and pasting, and that's what I want to tell you, that where we can actually break down this program into multiple subroutines and functions. Okay, I'm not going to teach you that this time, but I'm trying to tell you that you did see that I was copy and pasting, so we can avoid that and make our program a little bit more efficient by breaking my code into smaller functions. Now, the next class, I'm going to tell you that. So we will get to it, right? But you would have seen that I'm copying and pasting, and that's what I want to point out. The other thing I want to do right now is really where I want to calculate this payment not by running my macro, right? Or running my shortcut. I want a button like any other software, okay? That's what I'm going to show this time, this class. And the next class we'll think about how I break down these modules, this particular subroutine into smaller subroutines and smaller functions. Okay, I'll get into that. And going further, how do we load all these values from a file? Those are things that we are going to learn as we go further, right? But right now, I just want to show you how I can put a form control, that is a button, in the spreadsheet itself and invoke this module by clicking on that button. Okay, Again, it's very in VBA it's very simple. In Excel it's very simple. We just need to learn it. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this for now, and I am going to show you something here where it says insert. In this ribbon for the developer, there is a ribbon where a ribbon control called insert. Okay, and if I click on insert, you see there is two things that's displayed here. Okay, one is form controls, another is ActiveX controls. And if you look at these options that you have, they're very similar. Maybe ActiveX control is a little bit more, it looks a little better. Okay, now we can, if you see that in the form control there is a button, in the ActiveX control also there is a button. Okay, so I need to insert any one of these buttons. Both the buttons will work. So then what's the difference, or which one should you use? Well, I generally prefer the ActiveX controls because, so this is what happened, right? Microsoft originally built all these form controls. Then later in time, they built this ActiveX controls, and they did it because ActiveX controls are a little bit more easy for them. It's a little bit more standardized and modularized for their software, right? That's why they did it. But generally what I see is that ActiveX control is a little bit more advanced. It's a little bit more customizable. So I generally use a ActiveX control, right? But really speaking, and form controls are obviously doesn't have a lot of options. It works, right? For this purpose, we can use both, but I'm just going to use an ActiveX control. So I'm going to click on the command button. And when I clicked on it, you see that my cursor became like a plus. And that is because I can take that and I can do something like that. Okay. Beautiful. Now I have a button. Okay. And this button can be sized. Okay. And if you right click on the button, there's something called as properties. Click on the properties. There are many things you can change in this button. Okay. The one thing that I want to change now is the background color. Okay. And I can change the background color to, I know buttons usually are gray, but just to show you that there are options, let's say that I want to make it like a light, pinkish button. Okay. And the font also, you can change the font as well as the fore color. I'm going to change the fore color to, again, I'm going to use the palette and make it dark blue. Okay. Now it still says command button 1. Okay. And if you see on the top, you have a name called command button 1. This name is different. Okay. Name is, it just provides a name for that button. Okay. And I'm going to change that to, I don't know, let me call it as calc button. Okay. But changing that will not change the caption. Okay. In order to change the caption, you have a caption property, right? So here you can do, what should I say? Calculate loan schedule. Okay. It's just calculating the loan schedule. So that's what I put in there. Now I can make so this is the font I have. I can make it a little bigger, maybe 14. And in this particular font, it looks like there's a narrow bold. So I make it narrow bold, save OK. Yeah, so the button became a little bigger. And let me resize it. Okay, that looks good. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to close the properties. So I got nice button here. Okay. Now, when I double click on this, when I click on this button, I want to run the calculation. How do I do it? Okay. Well, when I double click on the button, it goes to Visual Basic. Nice, right? But it actually, when it went to Visual Basic, and there is a subroutine called calc button click, but it doesn't have any code in there. So the idea is, hey, I want to take that, whatever the function I wrote, and make that as the code, right? Where is my function? Well, basically, if you take the module, if you I double clicked on this module, you see modules, there is a calculate payment function here. But when I look at the workbook or sheet 1, in the sheet 1, okay, because this is sheet 1 of the workbook, right? That's where the button is, okay? Now, you could copy everything inside this sub into the button, and your stuff will work, right? But instead of doing that, what you can do is you can call this calculate payment like how you call other functions, like the range function, right? See, we used all kinds of functions here. We use the range function, we use the round function, right? Same way, when you define a module like this, calculate payment, you can actually call that as a function. How do you call it? Very, very simple. Let me copy that. I copy that. I go to the sheet 1, and here I'm just pasting it. When I do this, when I say calculate payment, it should call the subroutine. Now, of course, I put the calculate payment and I put two parentheses, right? Let me take the parentheses off. So here, what happened is that, because the parentheses is if you're passing some parameters, then you are using parentheses, and usually you use that for functions. But in this case, I just need to call that module, right? So I just type that value, that thing here. Now what will happen is, when I click on the button, this calculate payment will be invoked, okay? Let's see if it works. Well, I need to, for this to work, I got to run it. Okay, and then minimize it. Then see, now I'm not in the design mode anymore. I'm in the actual run mode, right? So I click on calculate. It actually calculated it, but you didn't see it. So in order to make sure that you can see that it actually calculated it, I'm just going to change some parameters, and you should see the numbers changing. So I'm going to make that as 400,000. I am going to make the number of years as 18 years. And I'm going to change the interest to 4.55%. Okay, how about that? Okay, let's see if I click on the button, does it calculate? Okay, you should see that the values are really changed, right? Your monthly payment became higher. Your interest paid and the principal paid changed. And this should go on for 216 months, okay? I can go down and see. 216 months, right? So now what has happened is, you don't have to call the macro anymore. You click on the button, the calculation will be done, right? And that looks more like a real software. And really speaking, once let's say that I save this. Well, let me do Control S, which is saving it. Let's say that I close Excel. Let me close Excel. Then come back and open Excel. And I'm opening that program that I saved. So now everything is there. Now you don't have to go to the macro. You can click on calculate and it will calculate, right? And I can change the value here. I can change it to 15 years, okay? Then I say calculate, the value is changed. So your macro actually is running based on your button click, okay? And that is a fantastic thing where, you're getting into Excel, but you're doing something that Excel cannot do, running a mortgage schedule or a loan schedule with the button click, okay? Fantastic, right? You actually extended Excel into some new software. Now, there is also a possibility where into any of these ribbon tabs, you can actually add an icon here, and when you click on that, you can run the macro. Okay, maybe next class I'll teach you that. So that will be useful. So this is really local to this sheet, right? To this sheet, if you have this sheet, because you can have other sheets, okay? This sheet doesn't have anything. In this sheet, if all the input is provided, the loan schedule will be calculated automatically, okay, when you click on that button. Now, if you want to run some program that is applied to multiple sheets, then it makes sense to put an icon here and then run the macro, right? Like put that in the ribbon itself. You can actually even create your own ribbon tab, okay? Excel is very powerful and it's very customizable. That said, I think let's go back. Let's recap what we learned today. And let me click on Visual Basic. Go back to the module. Double click on the module. Okay. So what I did is that we extended the same calculate payment. We added some bunch of variables. The goal today was that we want to calculate the interest paid, principal paid, and balance remaining for every row for the number of months. What we did is for the first row, we actually did that calculation here outside the loop, okay? And after we did the first row calculation, we kind of copied the same thing, but then we did it inside the loop for each row and then populated the values for each row. And this way you can, so the program that you have written now, I'm going to close this, is really beautiful because for any loan, even car loans, okay, furniture loan, you can take the spreadsheet with you. I don't know if you have your computer, you can go before any vendor where you're going to buy these things, and you can say that, hey, what's my loan amount? Okay, so $35,000. So let's say that it's for a car. Okay, so you're buying a $35,000 car. How many years you're paying for it? Maybe 4 years, right? And what is the interest rate? And you can provide some sort of interest rate, right? I think 3%, okay? And then calculate my schedule. It's going to say that my monthly payment is $700. Actually that's not bad for 4 years, $774. And my schedule is this way. Then for 4 years I keep paying. And see, for the car, kind of your interest paid is less because your number of years is really less, right? And you're paying a little bit of your principal over years. After 4 years, your loan is zero, okay? So, and when these guys say that, hey, your monthly payment, what they're doing is in order to reduce the monthly payment, they will be increasing the number of years. So they'll put 5 and then calculate. Your monthly payment decrease. It's a very, very bad way to negotiate that way because they're really cheating. They're not giving you any better deal. They're just increasing the number of years you need to pay. And ultimately, when you, and we probably need to do that, is when you sum up the interest paid and the principal paid, you will really see that you're actually paying more with the less monthly payment. Okay, so these are things that you will have to learn. Anyway, so you have a software that can do this for you, and so you can actually take this calculation and put it in. Now, I don't know whether the same sheet will work in a mobile phone. I really don't know, right? If macros work in a mobile phone, I'm not sure, right? I probably need to check once. So if it works in the mobile phone, then you can take your Excel sheet in the mobile phone and actually calculate it, right? Probably it will not work. But anyway, so you can take your laptop to your loan vendor, and while they are calculating, you can also calculate and say that, hey, I know what I'm doing, right? In fact, your loan financial person who's helping you, they probably may not even know these formulas, right? You probably know that better. Anyway, thank you very much. So the next class, I think some of the things I want to do is I want to introduce you subroutines and functions, how you write them, how you return values, stuff like that. Just the same program. We'll do that. Then the one thing I forgot to do, which again I'll do in the next class, is that how do I calculate these sums to show that hey, how much interest I'm paying and how much principal I'm paying over this many years, right? I probably need to do that just to show that that works. Then I will dwell a little bit deeper into these financial calculations, so that this time we did some sort of rounding. We want to make it a little bit more accurate. We can make it a little bit more accurate to dollars and cents. The dollar value is right. The cent value is not right. So we can fix that a little bit without doing this kind of rounding. So we'll learn that. And then if we have time, I'll also talk about, so you have the loan amount and the number of years and all these things here, right? What if it's put in another file? Okay, just a file. And you want to load it from the file. How do we do it, right? And then we can go on. I mean, this whole Excel sheet, we can save it as a CSV file. We can take this Excel sheet, format it a little bit and send an email to somebody. I mean, we can have another button called email, and then you click on the email. You can provide the email address, and somebody gets an email with this calculation. So there's the limit. The sky is the limit, right? Because Excel is extremely powerful. Then the other thing that we need to understand is, look at how fast all these calculations are happening. So and that's because the whole Excel engine itself is really very well optimized by Microsoft. So therefore, things can run really fast if you optimize your spreadsheet. I know that sometimes if spreadsheet has a lot of data, then calculations will get a little slower. But there is enormous power learning this Visual Basic for applications. Anyway, thank you very much and see you in the next class.